Hey friends, how's it going and welcome back to the channel. Before I start, I want to wish you a happy Lunar New Year and I wish that you have received many red packets. Alright, in today's video I want to share with you about the open-close principle as part of the solid principles and how that is applicable to iOS, and I'm going to illustrate an example to do with analytics. So if you are aware, solid principles is one of the foundation of good programming architecture and structure, and today I want to talk to you about this one over here. I want to illustrate to you how we can implement that and some of the practical ways can actually use that. Okay, so what this principle states is that the object or entity should be open for extension but closed for modification. Alright, it sounds a bit cryptic, but what it basically means is that you have to protect your code. Alright, so let's assume you are building a library or you're building an external framework. How can you ensure that your class or your business logic is protected from modification, but is still open for modification, where users of your class is able to not be confined to certain limits of your class? So for example, if you create some kind of enum, so let's assume analytics, you create some kind of enum. Every time you want to introduce a new event, you have to change that enum. You have to add an additional case. So this would basically violates this open-close principle. Alright, so I have a project over here and I'm going to illustrate to you how this works. Okay, so I have a view controller over here and I've integrated this project with Firebase Analytics. Okay, so let's imagine that you are building analytics for your app. Okay, over here, and we have a very simple example. So we have a submit button. Okay, we have another button, so this is going to be a very random button, and of course we have added the selector inside over here, which would correspond to these two functions over here. And then we also have the view did load. Okay, so very simple. I'm not even like auto laying out these buttons into the view because that's not important for our example over here. All right, so let's assume that you have to write analytics for this view controller to track when view did load happens, when there is a submit button click event, or the another button tap event, sorry, not click, tap event. All right, so how can we structure analytics whereby it illustrates the open-close principle? Okay, so if you are working on the app yourself and you are the only developer, yes, you can create an enum that contains all the different cases, and then every time you want to add a new event, you basically just add a new case, right? But let's imagine you can't do that, or you're working in a team that has many developers and you are working in a specific target. All right, so let's assume that you have this project over here. We have the main target. Let's assume you have another target and you do not want, okay, so let me just show it to you. So we have a framework over here. So let's call this analytics. Let's call this an analytics kit, okay, for example. So let's assume that you are working on this target, okay, your files are inside over here, and you do not want any of your other developers who are working on the main target to modify your code. How would you structure that code? All right, that's where the open-close principle comes in. Okay, so let's jump right in over here. Okay, so typically how you would do that is that you're going to create some kind of singleton, some kind of analytics class. So I have my reference over here, so I'm just gonna copy them bit by bit so that I can walk you through the code and you can understand that a lot better than me just pasting the whole thing inside, because I think in the previous video someone commented that I should be coding and typing alongside. Okay, so let's create a tracker class. So let's call this tracker. Okay, so I'm going to call this a closed tracker. So we are going to have an open tracker which implements the open-close principle. Okay, so open-close principle here, and then we have a non-open-close principle here. Okay, so I kind of hope you get that. Okay, so we have a tracker over here, and then because I've already integrated Firebase already, so I'm going to add a type alias over here so that we don't get confused. Okay, so rather than using analytics.track, I'm going to just type alias this so that it's easy to understand. So for example, if you are having many different providers, for example, you have Mixpanel, you have Amplitude, you have Google Analytics, and you have whatnot, this is a good way to just specify the type alias here so you can identify that a lot better. Okay, so now I'm going to create a singleton over here. So let's call this shared, and then close tracker, and then let's not forget to do the private init. Okay, so this is pretty standard stuff over here. And then what you're going to do is that you're going to have some kind of track function that takes in some kind of event. All right, so but before that, let's see what is the signature of Firebase. So fir analytics dot, I think it's called log event. All right, so what do we pass in? We pass in a string as well as a dictionary, an optional dictionary, right? So over here, what most what I used to do would be to create something like, let's call this close analytic event. Okay, so we'll do something like that. Okay, so maybe a view loaded, and then you have another one called submit button tap. Okay, so for example, something like this, right? And then you'll pass in the event over here, which is of type close analytic event. So obviously I'm going to have an open analytic event later on. And then over here, I'm going to pass in the params, which is going to be the same signature. All right. And then over here, we're going to pass in the event dot raw value, and then the params, we're just going to pass in the params over here. Okay, so I hope that this is easy to understand, and I think this is what most people do. For example, inside over here, let's create an instance of the closed tracker. So closed tracker.shed, and then what most people, and what myself included, would do would be to do something like this, dot track, and then we have view loaded, and then we set a nil over here. Okay, we can do dot track, and then maybe submit button tap nil over here. So imagine what happens if if you have a new button, okay, a new requirement, and you have to track that as well, and then you realize that you have to add another case inside this enum. And let's assume if this code is protected, okay, it's guarded by another team, then you have to raise a PR, and then, you know, code review and things like that. All right, so of course that slows down the development process. Okay, so let me show it to you how you would do that otherwise with the open close principle over here. Hi developers, I want to introduce you to my brand new course that I've created this year in 2023. This is the iOS and Swift MVVM combined SnapKit, Snapshot, UI and unit test course. All right, so this is all the skills that you need to become a senior iOS engineer, and I've created this course to share all the knowledge that I've acquired for the past 7 years. So if you're a developer with 2 or 3 years of experience, look no further, because this course is going to supercharge your skills to land that senior developer role. I will provide promo links in the video description, so do check it out. Okay, so I'm going to again use the type alias, okay, and then I'm going to add in the singleton shared property as well. And then, okay, so we're going to call this track function, but this time, rather than specifying an enum, what I want to do is to specify a strut instead. Okay, so I'm going to call this open analytic event. Okay, so this could be something that's pretty new for some of you. Okay, so what does this strut contain? It just have a property called of type string. Okay, so let's assume that you also have all these known cases. What can you do? You can actually do this static let view loaded, okay, and this will be of type open analytic event. So I'm going to do self.init. Okay, you can do view loaded over here, and then static let submit button tap. Okay, let me just copy this, of type self equals to .init. Okay, just like that. Alright, so what's going to happen over here is that inside the track function, you're going to take in this event, and this is going to be the open analytic event, and of course, let's pass in the params here as well. Okay, so over here inside the Firebase analytics, inside the implementation, we're going to do .log event. This time, we can also do event.name. Alright, parameters, just pass in the params over here. Alright, so I hope that this is still easy to understand. Okay, so now let's get back to the implementation. Okay, let's assume the main target over here, the main app. Okay, so what you can do over here is that instead of having to modify the enum, because right now you don't have an enum, it's just a strut, you can actually do close. Oops, you can actually do open tracker. Let's have an instance of the open tracker. Open tracker.shed. Now this time, you're not subjected to another developer's review and approval. Alright, you can do open tracker.track, and this time you can actually specify the event if it's already loaded. If it's not, you can actually initialize it over here. And then you can call this another button tap. Alright, so I hope that this is helpful. Alright, so again, this principle is just a very simple example to illustrate the open-close principle. And yeah, I think this is it. And just let me know if you have any comments or questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Anyway, I wish you all the best, and have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.